Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. This is still Rise and Shine, and we're beaming live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Of course, Mary Joseph just brought us tidbits of global news, information of things happening around the globe. We've had some conversations so far on Rise and Shine. For you to catch up on all that, you need to get to our YouTube channel where we stream live and also on all of our other social media platforms. Remember that all of our programs are streamed live on our website at spectrumtv.ng. It is important for you to be a part of the conversation. Let's know what your thoughts are as a Nigerian with regards to what's happening in our country. Of course, at this point, we are going to be having conversations with our resource person as we'll be looking into several issues happening in the country. Of course, I'm being joined here this morning by Mr. Marvel Essien, who is an organizational development and human resource consultant. Good morning, sir. Thanks for
Good
joining us.
morning. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, nice to hear. It's been a minute since I last
Yeah,
saw you, but
yeah.
it's good. So I'll just ask, how is Nigeria on your end?
We are actually on the edge as far as Nigeria is concerned at this very important period of our economic development, especially the economic scene, on the political scene. In fact, we just have to pray for everything to stabilize in Nigeria.
When most Nigerians will hear you now saying we just have to pray, people might just come for you and ask, all of the prayers that we prayed in the years past, where are the results of the prayers, that we have prayed? But it looks like we are just turning hands from one issue to the other. Do you really think that there is a time that we will stabilize as a nation, because things have really gone like heated up?
Yes, maybe because of the kind of generation that is coming up in Nigeria, we are likely going to have a change. At the moment, the pressure is so much on Nigeria. In the next few weeks, we are going to see a new Nigeria if the Supreme Court makes a judgment that is pleasing to Nigerians.
That is a really troubling twist, because I mean, what would be put in the context of a judgment that will be pleasing to Nigerians, that would affect the outlook, of Nigerians on Nigeria, as it were? But since you've already taken us there, let's start from there. Let's start from Atiku Abubakar's case, with appeal case, of course, against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The tribunals had ended. The tribunal petition council had given their verdict. Now they moved appeal to Supreme Court. Of course, that of the APM have been dismissed. So it's just that of the People's Democratic Party and the Labour Party that is left. First of all, dismissing that of APM and leaving this two, do you think that is by reason of the fact that these other two parties have a stronger leg in the case as opposed to APM?
Certainly, the PDP and Labour Party, they have a stronger leg in the case. Of course, dismissing that of APM is something that should be done to allow the judiciary concentrate on the critical issue relating to that of Obi and Atiku. As we speak today, even yesterday, the commentaries from some of the justices in the Supreme Court has already sent jitters to some Nigerians that are they going to be fair in this judgment if over a glaring evidence situation like this, you are asking a question that may depict that of incompetence in the part of judiciary, a question that shouldn't have arisen in the first place at all, that was asked by one of the justices, wasn't a very good signal for Nigeria or for Nigerians. That is part of the things that the judiciary really need to sit back to look at. Even if it was a joke, that's not a point in Nigeria that we should be joking over a situation like this. I think the judiciary need to put their acts together and see how they can come up with a judgment that is going to be very, very clear and beneficiary to the stability of Nigeria as a nation. You see, when you look at this article, LP Labour Party case, it's very, very critical to the success of politics in Nigeria and the future of Nigeria and the future of judiciary, the institutional issues in Nigeria. You see, yesterday, was a very good day for Nigeria when we won that case in London. That is the gas deal case, as it were. But you see, the argument from the lawyers of the other side, the P&I lawyer, he said what they are faced with is as a result of institutional incompetency in Nigeria. I found that as an insult. You see, for a lawyer in London to say that our institutional system are incompetent, I found that very, very insulting. But come to look at it, can the judiciary show us that they are very, very competent at what they are doing? I do not care which side wins in this Supreme Court judgment, but it should be backed up with logic. It should be backed up with reasons. It should be backed up with clear issues that, oh, this is clearly this. You shouldn't be asking, should I rely on this or should I rely on that as a justice of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? So it raised a deep concern about the position of Nigeria, about the position of the judiciary over this case as it stands today.
This is a really serious issue. Of course, as part of this, we see the fact that the CSU evidence that was released by the Chicago State University to Atiku Abubakar over this particular appeal issue has been termed inadmissible in court. A lot of Nigerians were keeping fingers crossed, and there was expectation with how will this uncovering or unearthing of a certificate by Atiku affect the proceedings of the case. Now, when we of course we see the fact that the case still continue, but the evidence has been tagged inadmissible. So does it just mean that is going to be thrown out of the window and let's continue with the challenge as it were?
Well, I don't think at this stage we cannot say it's inadmissible. Don't forget, the Supreme Court, they have not yet come back. Some opinion are saying it's inadmissible, of course, but of course it should come from the judges. We should wait and hear from the judges. Let them be the ones to tell us that this is not admissible. Then we would understand where they are coming from. If they say this is not admissible, then we would have to look at it and say, why is it inadmissible? Does it mean that there were no grounds for us to admit this case, this evidence, or this evidence that are put forth by the Atiku's lawyers? Until it comes to that point, we cannot say that it is inadmissible. The judges have gone back to have reserved judgment on the matter, and part of the judgment we are expecting when they come back is to tell us if this evidence is admissible or not, if they are going to put it as part of the logic behind any form of judgment or any ruling that may be coming from the Supreme Court in Nigeria. And that's part of the things that we are looking out for when a date is fixed and we are the Supreme Court receipt for this case to be heard. And we are going to look at that. We are going to look at what they are going to come up with in terms of the overwhelming evidence that has been brought forth by Atiku's team over this case. You see, this has a precedent in Nigeria, but you see, during the Shagari Awolowo election case, as it were, it was a matter of the judiciary trying to balance law and political expediency in that judgment, as it were, at that time. It was a matter where Shagari had scored a certain number of votes. Of course, it was over about 2 million votes above what Chief Awolowo scored at the time. But the argument was there was there was something in Nigerian constitution at that time that said you must win a quarter of each state. That's similar to this 25% of every state. And of course, Shagari had won 12 states, 12 states or 13 states. But you see, he did not get 25% in Kano State. I think he had about 19% in Kano State. Should he have had 25% in Kano State, it means that he would have been qualified to become the president of Nigeria. So the matter went to court, and the judgment was such that Nigerians were asked to, the judiciary, were to determine what is 1/3 of 19. If you were to define what is 1/3 of 19, and the judiciary made a mathematics and came up with 12 point something. And the Nigerians shouted and screamed that no, it should have been 13 instead of 12 point something. But of course, we let that go. It was minor. But this has to do with perjury. It has to do with forgery. It's quite different from what happened in 1979. And what we are going to look at is the judiciary giving out a judgment that would not set a wrong precedent in Nigeria, giving out a judgment that would be seen to be fair in its entirety. That's what we are looking at to come from the judiciary this time around.
Well, so another twist to this is that we have seen statements being made. I'm trying to look up for that particular story that I've been looking at this morning. The body language of the former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. We're trying to call up as we see. It's been referred to as, I mean, that it is not going to hold sway in all of these activities that is happening. So we are wondering, what has Yemi Osinbajo said, and why is it biting on, Tinubu's end of the conversation? So it's more like calling bluff whatever former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo had said, but that isn't even coming up for me this morning. But once I get back to it, we'll just look into it this morning. But let's look at some other issues. Promises being made by the Tinubu-led administration, policy reforms, social safety net programs being initiated. Some were scrapped and updated. Speaking of the Empower program now, but they have said that by January 2024, that's about 2 months away from now, that the student loan is going to take effect. If you remember vividly well, when that student loan conversation came up, there were a lot of conversations for and against. Oh, this is not going to place students in good light. Do you know how it's going to affect the students in the long run? It looks good in the immediacy, but let's look at long-term results. What are your general thoughts about the student loan? And hopefully, we have been promised implementation by January.
Yes, implementing the student loan scheme in January without a detailed analysis of what how the eligibility standards and how it will be operating is something else completely. One of the fears that was at the time was the government's intention may be to increase school fees and make education so expensive and now drive people students to take a loan to go to school. But the deeper concern had always been on the implementation modality. How is the federal government going to implement this? They have said, of course, this would be done directly from the CBN and it would be handled by the loans board. Of course, we know that in Nigeria, we need to be very, very thorough about understanding things from the very beginning. Otherwise, we keep seeing what we have been seeing in the past, that institutions come up with things and these things fail in progress because of implementation. The kind of implementation challenges that mainly we are seeing that may come out from here is about the implementation, the eligibility standards. Who are the students that are eligible for this loan? How is the payback? How is it going to be done? How are you going to hold people to it? How are you going to recover this money that they are giving as loan from people? We have a situation in Nigeria already that we are having challenges with our employment level, and you are saying people will go take loan, go to school, come out from school, go for NYC, the government will still pay allowance for the NYC, they come back from the NYC, where is the job? How are they going to repay the loan? What things are we putting in place for us to ensure that we increase on our employment standards? If you create jobs in the country, if you make things very well and good in terms of the economy running very, very well, then you can say you give out this loan. Look at it from this other side. You give 500,000 naira to a student to go to school. Before 4 years period, we don't know whether naira will be 5,000 naira per dollar at that time. So what's the real value of the loan that you've given out to the students? So what are you going to recoup as a loan that you have taken back from school? Or would you be shifting the goalposts? So stability of the economy should be what government should be focused on. If they want to make a grant, it's better we call it a grant. You give out the money, call it a grant. But if you say it is a loan that it should be paid back, we need to look at all these things comprehensively to be able to say, oh, you have rolled out a good policy, or for the nation to be excited about this kind of policy that you have rolled out, as it were.
Serious concerns there. It would have been better if we were going for a grant instead of a student loan. Implementation issues. I remember you speaking about the case between the federal government versus the P&ID with regards to
The gas deal.
yeah, gas deal, and you're saying, you know, that one of the lawyers on the P&ID's firm is saying part of the issues that they experienced in Nigeria was infrastructural decay,
Institutional
yeah,
incompetence.
and how it affected them.
Yeah.
So, yes, you had mentioned that you took that as an insult, but to a very large extent, are those not statements that we should really look into? Because when we look at these institutional deformities and bring it back to like ventures and policies like student loans, are those not the same things that will eat into the fabric of these lofty ideas that have been brought forward by the federal government?
Excuse my sentiments. It's like this: if my father doesn't carry himself well and my friends are laughing at him, I will feel embarrassed. That is why I'm seeing it as an insult coming from an outsider to tell us that we have this institutional incompetence.
Not that we do not know that we have those issues.
Of course we have. But I expect us to work on it, of course. I expect us to strengthen our institutions. You see, when we talk about due process in Nigeria, we should take it serious. When we talk about governance, corporate governance in Nigeria, we should take it serious and ensure that there is compliance in all these areas that we are addressing. But you see, when we look at our institutions, one institution that is standing out right now is the judiciary. How they are going to paint Nigeria, how they are going to show Nigeria that Nigeria has institutions that are competent, is for them to come up with these things. There are so many things in Nigeria that may be happening at the moment that speaks so much volume about our institutional incompetency. We should not allow foreigners, we should not allow the foreign bodies to begin to look at us and disgrace us by telling us that our institutions were incompetent, that they observed incompetency in our institutions. We should not allow ourselves to do that. Of course, in-house, in what as a Nigerian, I tell you that I would point out 1, 2, 3, 4 institutions in Nigeria that are really exhibiting incompetency in their ways of doing things. Now, we should stop exhibiting this. And I am saying I felt insulted because a foreigner coming to tell us that our institutions are incompetent, caused by our people, by our government institutions, is not something very palatable. It is something that we should discourage by making our institutions to really sit up to see how we could position ourselves, position our nation in a manner that we should gather international respect. Foreigners should respect us as a country by the way we are doing things in our nation.
Okay, something else I'm going to talk about is Forex Crisis. It's been on. Now, the Naira is selling at 1,220 Naira against the dollar. Mr. Marvell, when did you ever think that in Nigeria we will get to a day that the Naira will be competing against the dollar at 1,000 plus? Last week we closed at about 1,020 Naira, and we thought that we had seen the worst. But standing at 1,220, that's a lot of crisis that is rocking that whole, monetary policy thing. How can we come out of this quagmire? Because it's a serious issue.
It is very,
The
very
dependence on Forex in Nigeria is really strong. So if the dollar is selling at 1,220 now, it means that we are going to be, experiencing another dimension of multifaceted inflation because we import everything that we use in this country. What's the way out of this Forex crisis?
You see, when I came in here, I sat down and I told you we are on the edge. Politically, we are on the edge. Look at that case in the Supreme Court. Economically, we are on the edge. Look at the fall of Naira to the level it has fallen to now. And I tell you, there are things, of course, that we should do, but it should have been a process. But you see, we should just look at this situation right now as the economic reality of the times. It is the reality of the times that we have found ourselves in the situation that we have found ourselves now. For us to address this, and honestly speaking, you will see that the naira, as it were, was just being printed and used without any production backing it up. Now, if you print naira notes like what happened in Uganda several years back, you are just trying to kill your economy completely. You're just sitting down printing naira. You remember Governor Obaseki screamed about this a few years back, that how can CBN print naira notes to protect the naira? Now, you see, government, they were spending a lot of money, over $1 billion every time, using it to block the naira. Now, we are a nation that had been living in debt for a very, very long time. We're just living in borrowed times and acting in ways as if we do not know what the economic system should be. Imagine that the previous administration has just left. They entered into an oil swap deal. That oil swap deal simply means that all the production that we're having in terms of our oil production would go, has been taken on loan already. That's like everything that we are producing in the country is on loan. You don't have income. Nigeria doesn't. Let me put it this way. It's as if you are selling your oil $30 million now. What actually comes to the federal government, that's the present government, to use for salaries at its administration and so on, is about 1 billion. You use 29 billion to pay loan that was used in the previous administration to pay themselves allowances, to buy cars for themselves, to build houses for themselves, to steal part of it for themselves. Those are the things that we are paying for right now. So when the President Tinubu, came into power, and he said, allow naira for the forces of demand and supply, our nakedness is now shown, that we don't have anything to hold our naira. We are not producing anything.
So would you say that particular move by the president, to allow the naira to float in that manner, is helpful? Is it really helping us at this time?
He's just protecting our future. Because if we continued borrowing for the next 8 years that he will stay, he can do that. The economy will collapse completely and Nigeria will become a failed state. That is the reality. Because they will get to a point that you cannot borrow again. Don't forget that this oil swap deal was entered into by the previous government, not because they chose to enter into it, but because they were looking for money to run government. And they did not have sources to borrow anymore. We left IMF, we went to this, we even borrowed from China, and we looked around where to borrow. Before the last option, okay, you have oil, be giving us your oil, and for this money that we are going to give you. And we don't have enough oil, we are being given. You see, if we were to produce oil 2 million barrels per day, now we are producing about, is it 1.6 or 1.7?
Absolutely.
So we are not even meeting up our production target in oil. And we are solely dependent on oil. That's the problem in Nigeria. So if we are solely dependent on oil, the oil is going the way it is going, then we've removed subsidy from oil. Don't we have other things to sell? Don't we have palm oil to sell? Don't we have solid minerals to sell? Don't we have?
We've seen the federal government make some moves.
Apart from the natural resources that we have to sell, can we produce things and be selling instead of importing toothpick? Can we produce toothpick in Nigeria? Can we produce this iframe in Nigeria? Can we produce the clothes we wear in Nigeria? Can we patronize our own made in Nigeria products? You see, most companies come into Nigeria, set up manufacturing concerns, and what they're simply doing is to import and just put those things together. When they say there's a car production company in Nigeria, it's an assemblage. Where are we getting the steel from? What is the status of our Jakarta steel mill? I've been to a Jakarta steel mill. Expansive, beautiful, very wonderful place. If you go in there, you see the investment in that place, the industry, the staff quarters, the roads map and everything. You would weep for Nigeria. We had one here. It's not as big as a Jakarta steel. I'm talking about the newsprint at Okuiboko. What is happening to the newsprint? We had that newsprint. We had malina trees planted all over the places. What happened to it? So we cannot
Management.
even produce all these things. If we were to produce these things and we are able to export, other than importing, what is our import-export ratio? So you need to, for us to make our naira to be strong, we need to have something to sell. China would not be lamenting because they sell, they are collecting the foreign exchange. But we don't have things to sell to collect foreign exchange to back up.
To cushion.
To
Okay,
cushion
now speaking about
naira.
cushioning, you know, the naira against the whole forex crisis, we see that Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy Wale Edu has said that the economy is going to receive 10 billion US dollars in foreign exchange inflow in the next couple of weeks to ease liquidity pressure in the foreign exchange market. So we are looking at borrowing another $10 billion, investing it as a cushioner for the naira. Is this in the first place a good economic move for the country at this time?
You see, the federal government at this stage, they have started acting in desperate ways. You don't make haphazard moves. You know, that fire brigade approach we talk about, how do we cushion this, how do we make this, you go hold this, hold that, as if a drowning person is in the sea trying to find life. That's what the federal government is doing right now. It is not something that would be beneficial to Nigeria in any way. We should be able to speak truth to ourselves. If you are borrowing that, how much did you borrow to buy vehicles for the House of Reps members? What was it very needful at this time for you to invest in those allowances, in buying those vehicles, in doing that? Of course, as a work tool, it's very, very good if we have the resources to get those work tools. Of course, we should be able to get them. But why say, oh, you are going to provide liquidity for the foreign market and you are going to borrow again to do this in order to fight? It's the same thing if you want to subsidize the foreign exchange, you want to subsidize naira, go ahead and do it outrightly and say you've subsidized the naira. If you do the mathematics, you would also see that they have said they have removed petroleum subsidy. We are still buying petrol less than 700 or so. I think maybe it has reached 700 now. I don't know.
About 600.
I don't know what happened on Monday.
As it got.
But I hate. But you see, if it is like this, you are secretly subsidizing petroleum products.
But we've continued to see even Melekari, boss of NNPC, come out to say that the federal government is not, subsidizing that petroleum product in any way. But we've also seen the Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria come out to say that the federal government is still subsidizing.
That's why they cannot import.
So who exactly is telling the lie here?
It's obvious. This is very, very obvious that the marketers, they are free to import, but they cannot. The windows have been opened to them. Come on, import fuel. Let everybody, the market was liberalized in that way. Let everybody be able to get product and sell to the people. Now, if they want to buy, when they bring it, they will be selling at a loss. Because is NNPC buying from a different market? Of course not. They are buying from the same source that NNPC will go to buy. So NNPC is able to buy because don't also forget a few weeks back, an NNPC official came out to scream that the federal government is owing them some kind of billion of naira. Where is that from? It's from the subsidy amount that they are supposed to give to NNPC to be able to import fuel to sell. We all know the price of this thing, PMS, in the international market. So where is Nigeria getting their PMS to be able to sell at 600 and something naira when oil is hitting $100
per barrel? But when we say, we're talking about this pricing now.
Yes.
At 600 plus, Nigerians are really, really suffering to even be able to purchase. I mean, Mr. Marvel, remember that at some points in this country, 5,000 naira could actually give you enough fuel for you to go buy.
Yes.
But 5,000 naira it's about 7 liters or thereabouts if at all it gets there. Yeah. Let's not also forget the very porous nature of some of our filling stations that won't even take you. So when we are saying that, yes, okay, the federal government is still or not still subsidizing petrol, marketers are saying, like you just also reiterated, that if we are subsidizing, if we are not subsidizing, petrol is meant to be more expensive.
Yes.
Mr. Marvel, if petrol is more expensive than it is right now, how do you think Nigerians are going to survive? A lot of people have parked their cars and are opting for public transport because people cannot keep up.
Oh, yeah, that is why we should be able to tell ourselves the truth as a nation. Now, we are in this stage. There is no country in the world. There is no government in the world. I've tried to research. I don't know if there is any that is not paying subsidy on one thing or the other. There is no country of the world. So we should be able to tell ourselves the truth. I would like a situation where our government, when they come up with a policy and they make a mistake, they come back to tell us, sorry, we have made a mistake. When the federal government came out to say, come, let us float the naira, let us remove subsidy, I personally supported them because I see it as a good policy. If you float the naira, let the reality dawn on us that we need to produce something and sell and make foreign exchange to be able to stabilize our economy. The world has become a global village. We are part of the world. We are doing business with the world. We are traveling out of the world. We are importing things from the world. We should be able to compete with the international community. We should be able to compete with every productive countries in the world. But are we productive? Are we doing what we are supposed to do? If this policy was to drive us to become productive, that would be nice. Not that you come out with this policy and corruption creeps in. One of the things that affected our foreign exchange as it started was that the CBN people began to issue dollars to the banks. Banks were not using it from Form A. They were not using it for any import, for anything at all. They were now selling it back to the Bureau de Change, that's the black market as we call them, to resell them at a margin, and the margin kept expanding. Suddenly CBN came out and said, oh, is this what is going, we are going to do this, we are going to do that, and they came out with some other things. Today they are talking about digitalizing foreign exchange and so on, and doing this and doing that. Those are all measures that if you sat down, planned it, think through it, and go through the implementation of it, you would likely get it right. But where you are not sincere about your implementation, that is where the problem comes from. The policies may be good, but how are we handling the implementation of these policies? How are we going about the implementation of these policies? This policy would have been excellently done, but for the banks, the CBN, and what deals they were doing with the foreign exchange brought us to this place that we are. The gas thing, the gas price thing, and so on. You heard yesterday the gas price that somebody is adding 7 million naira to 20 metric tons of gas. Instead of selling at 9 million, they are selling it at 16 or 17 million.
And how that comes back to bite the common man. There's so much conversation we need to have. Yeah. Balancing policies, the reality on ground, and how we can do better. But our time is really fast spent, and there was a lot more we wanted to touch. We definitely will have you back sometime so we can still look into these conversations. But just in a few seconds, do you have any concluding thoughts this morning before we wrap up the show?
Yes, I just want to talk about the strengthening of our institutional systems. It would do well for Nigeria. First of all, INEC is the major problem in Nigeria. INEC is the major problem in Nigeria. If we strengthen that institution, our election process would be better. Nigeria should think more of meritocracy. Let's have people on merit in positions, and we'll be well and fine in this country. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Marvelous, for coming on the show this morning. Of course, he is an organizational development consultant and human resource consultant, of course, coming on the show and giving us your wealth of knowledge. We absolutely appreciate your time.